For our daily update on the presidential race. With respect to the debate the other night, it was another primary debate and another network ratings record. This time it was for Fox Business Network. According to Nielsen, they averaged 13.5 million viewers from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, when you compare that to what they normally get on a total daily basis, that's up from 64,000. You see, one of the challenges that the Fox Business Network has is a lot of people don't know where to find it because of where they were able to position it when they started it 8 years ago. But it does show the level of interest in this Republican presidential race because the 13.5 million number is pretty close to the 14 or 15 million reported for the, was it MSNBC or CNBC, the CNBC debate a couple of weeks ago, which was a total bomb in terms of us learning anything. So it showed that you had almost as many people this time around who wanted to learn something, and they tune in real high record numbers. Now, there was a McClatchy-Maris poll conducted recently when voters across the country were asked to describe, in one word, the 2016 presidential contest. It didn't say Republican Party, Democrat Party. How are people perceiving the presidential race? We all know that we started out with 17 Republicans. That's now been whittled down, and it's getting smaller and smaller. 8 people were on the big stage, 4 people were on the small stage. We'll see what happens when they have the next one in December. You started out with 5 Democrats. You now have Hillary plus 2. And I say Hillary plus 2 because it is not breaking news every time they do a survey, and Hillary still holds a strong lead. Democrats have obviously made up their mind that Hillary is going to be their nominee, regardless of the controversy, regardless of the misspokenness, and the list goes on. But when asked how would they describe the presidential race for 2016 in one word, most people use the word crazy. Independents, 45% of independents said it was crazy. 40% of Democrats said it was crazy, and 32% of Republicans said it was crazy. Now, I don't know if they got into any of the causes as to why a lot of people perceive it as crazy. Maybe that is a way of saying that it is unpredictable because outsiders, people not having held public office before, have been leading the race for nearly the entire time. And even today, with the latest polls, you still have Donald Trump and Ben Carson in a virtual tie in some states, and nationally they're still 1 and 2, double digits, and then the second tier are the high single digits. But it's interesting that those 2 individuals are still leading. Carly Fiorina, who's also an outsider, has been moving up, and that is a good thing. But the people that have been moving have been the ones that have been the outsiders. Maybe that's why a lot of people are calling the race crazy. I simply remind people when they ask me, well, who do I think is going to get the nomination? I said, I don't know. We're going to have to wait and allow it to unfold. Because as I warned people, in a presidential race, a lot can happen, good and bad. Sometimes good people end up not getting the nomination. Sometimes not your strongest people end up getting the nomination. And so it's going to continue to unfold. Because as I also pointed out early in this process, like it or not, perception is 50% of what causes people to make their decisions. Now, thankfully, the debate the other night of the Republican candidates gave people more substance to chew on, so to speak, than they have been able to get out of some of the previous debates. And so people who are forming that perception based upon substance are doing it the right way. We need a leader in the White House, folks. We don't need somebody to just occupy the position. Meanwhile, what are some of the candidates out there saying? Chris Christie did well the other night. And even though he was on the smaller, earlier debate, he says he is keeping his eye on the ball.
Our real adversary, the person that we need to defeat, is Hillary Clinton. And so I was going to make sure I spent my time last night letting the American people who are watching know that I have a plan to beat her.
And I think he's right, because the Democrats have decided, at least most of them, and according to the polls, that Hillary is going to be the nominee. And then you have Jeb Bush, who has been faltering in the polls, and he announced that he has picked up the endorsement of a man he calls a hero.
Bob Dole is someone who is just an iconic political figure. I admire him so much. He reminds me of my dad. These are people from the greatest generation that have served selflessly this country in so many ways.
I have a lot of respect for Bob Dole, but I also recall that when Bob Dole ran for president and Jack Kemp was his vice presidential pick, I had a feeling, even when Jack Kemp asked me to be one of his advisors, that Bob Dole was going to lose, unfortunately. He spent a lot of time in Congress. Thank you, Bob Dole. He served in the military. Thank you, Bob Dole. He has truly been a patriot. Thank you, Bob Dole. But I just kind of had a feeling that he was not going to win the presidency, and he didn't. And here's one of the reasons why, as I recall. I remember having a conversation with vice presidential nominee Jack Kemp. And as one of his advisors, I had the opportunity to do some campaigning with him and make several stops. And I said to Jack Kemp, I said, Jack, the Dole campaign people, they don't have a sharp enough message or communications strategy to get Bob Dole elected. Remember, I was president of Godfather's Pizza at the time. You have to know a little something about marketing. I had worked there as an executive with Burger King. You have to know a little something about marketing. And I saw flaws in their marketing/communications plan. So I asked Jack Kemp, I said, Jack, would you mind if they allowed me to sit in on their communications, marketing, media strategy meetings? Maybe I could provide some insight from my experience in business. The answer back from the Dole campaign and the staffers was no. Not just no, but no. They thought they had all the answers. Now, fast forward to 2015, folks. I see a lot of that happening in some of these campaigns today, where the staffers think, now, there are some good staffers out there. I don't want all of the staffers out there getting mad at me. And if you do, I don't care. They think they have all the answers. Let's take an example from the other night. John Kasich, I don't know whether his staff suggested that he defend Too Big to Fail by saying, I want to help the little people if they got money in a big bank and it fails. I don't know whether he came up with that on the spur of the moment or whether his staff told him to do it. Remember one of the debates where Jeb Bush attacked Marco Rubio? Bad strategy. Bad strategy. So, but when Bob Dole, Jeb Bush's hero, ran for president, they really didn't want to win. Or let me rephrase that. They thought that they could win because they thought they had all the answers. And so I think Christie is doing the right thing in terms of having a focus on comparing himself to Hillary Clinton. Carly Fiorina does the same thing also in many of her talks and many of her comments. Because rather than beating up each other, why don't you start talking about how you're going to defeat and how you differ in policy solutions from Hillary Clinton? Jeb Bush, he's back out there on what he calls the Jeb can fix it stump.
Whatever we have, I would view not as a problem but an opportunity. Because if you start with the premise, everything's a problem, end is near, it's kind of hard to imagine how you're going to fix it.
How about most things are a problem? Okay. We don't have to say everything is a problem. How about most things? The tax code is a mess. The economy is sluggish. We don't have a clear foreign policy strategy. We have hampered energy development toward true energy independence in this country. Poverty has increased in the last 7 years. Come on, Jeb. I want to hear about some of these things that you say that are not a problem, which is why people, number one, think that this race is crazy. And number two, a lot of people in this country are frustrated. And it starts with the tax code / economy / economic growth / business growth / job growth. Ben Carson still talking about changing the tax code.
Because the minute you change the system and allow just one crack in it, everybody starts moving toward that crack, and then pretty soon you have another, and then you wind up with a 75,000-page tax code like we have right now. That's what we don't want.
Now, some people have quoted 75,000 pages. Some people have quoted 80,000 pages. Some people have quoted 70,000 pages. It doesn't matter. It's a mess, and it needs to be replaced. Now, what Ben was talking about was what I talked about yesterday. If you go in with the premise, you're going to reform the tax code, like Ben Carson says, you're going to migrate toward those cracks. Everybody's going to fight for their favorite deduction, or they're going to fight for their favorite whatever in the tax code, and you're going to end up right back where you are. All you have to do is look at what happened back in the 1980s when they, quote unquote, simplified the tax code, and it has now grown back into the beast that it was before they simplified it back in the 1980s. And so that's where you've got to start. And I'm hard pressed to find, when our military's hands are not tied, that's the most effective government thing we have going. But when you tie their hands, folks, then they're not able to do what they do best, which is to defend this country. To defend this country. Well, Hillary Clinton, she is trying to do a little damage control after recently downplaying the VA scandal.
You represent the very best that our country has to offer. I'm thinking about you today. I'm thinking about my dad and generations of veterans past. Thank you for serving, and happy Veterans Day.
Bless her heart. Doesn't that sound so sweet, Shana B? You see, folks, in an interview, she said, well, things aren't as bad as the Republicans are making them out to be. Really? You now have Democrats who are admitting we've got major challenges and issues at the Veterans Administration. So, Hillary, your little "you remember the very best" commercial ain't going to be enough to walk it back, because some of us are not stupid. You're listening to the Herman Cain Show.